everything, if you're going to live out here, everything is harder. There is not one thing that's easier, honestly. You're going to live on a bumpier road because there isn't, I mean, we only have a handful of neighbors on this road. We don't have the tax base to make a better road, honestly. We don't have as good of cell phone coverage. I'm amazed that, you know, with the cell phone booster, I have decent coverage out here. So again, thank you to our Patreons and supporters who, or in this case, Houston Firefox, who donated me a cell phone booster. You know, now I have decent internet out here. There's times I joke, I miss the 1990s with my modem. That was faster quite often. Okay. Everything, as soon as you say alt energy, alt lifestyle, everything is harder. But I still think it's worth it. You know, I'm not ready to move back to an apartment. But as long as you know that being on the fringe is going to make your life much more difficult, at least you'll be ready for it. You know, somebody should tell you up front before you just run out here and, you know, go be a hippie or something. Anyway, I think I've said enough on that. I've got hot water. I'm going to take a shower, and I think I'm going to shave this off. This is really bugging me. I was going to try it out for a while, but yeah, it's got to go. So anyway, y'all be good to each other. Peace out and live the life. All right, that'll work. I'm just fiddling around out here, and it's like, cool. All right. Obviously, we're back in the bus. It's a beautiful day outside. It's like 70 degrees in here in the bus, but it's really windy. I really wanted to shoot this outside, but there you go. So I got a list, and I was just thinking I'd started writing a script for this a while ago. And it's on the laptop, and of course the laptop is busy doing something else, so I'm going to see if I can get I've got a Raspberry Pi out here in the bus. I did a lot of the writing out here. One of the problems that I deal with is, this is a new world problem. I've got too many computers, and I'll have something written or worked on or started, and then I have no idea where it is, because I don't know which computer it's on. Yeah. So for anybody who doesn't know, the Raspberry Pi, it's a little, almost credit card size, $35 microcomputer that runs a version of Linux. Not super powerful, but it's enough to run a lot of stuff. Yeah, it's just gorgeous today. So today is, I think, the 6th of February. There might be some editing involved here. Yep, today's Saturday, the 6th of February. Okay, now I don't need this anymore. I had some ideas. This started off as kind of like, how hippie do you want to be, right? And there's no one answer, I guess. So that's kind of how it started. I was like, okay, so it's like I've been living off-grid now for a couple, 3 years, something like that. It's been over a year since I built the house. In fact, it's over a year now that I've been not working. Yeah, I just popped up a while ago. I'm like, yeah, it was the end of, because I'm starting to look at my taxes, right, because it's that time of year. And I got the W-2 from Sam's Club when I was working there, and I left Sam's Club right at about the end of January. You know, so I did work a little bit in 2020. And I was just kind of like, oh, yeah, it's been a year already. So thanks to all my Patreons and other supporters, and for everybody who watches the ads on the videos. I know they're really annoying, but that is my main source of income now, such as it is. It's not very much. You know, 50 or 60 a month is about the average, but it's something. And Patreons, thank you very much to all the new Patreons. I think I'm somewhere around $60 or $70 a month on Patreon now. So that, you take your AdSense, the Google ads and Patreons, that's just about enough to eat. So thank you, definitely. Anyway, I was kind of like, I sketched this out on the whiteboard, then I decided I was probably going to go back and look at my script anyway, because I took the time to write it. Now, obviously, nobody wants to hear me read. I don't really understand why you want to hear me talk in the first place, but, here we are. So, the ultimate off-grid guide, and how hippie do you want to be? Okay. So what I was kind of playing around with here, I'm going to just go freeform first, and then I'll go back to the script and see if I missed anything. All right. So there's labels and levels. And I started thinking about it. The first thing that came to mind was vegan. One, if you want to be vegetarian, that doesn't really bother me, but you have to keep telling us all the time. So that was kind of my gut feeling. Is like, okay, so you got, you're vegetarian, or you're vegan, or you're non-dairy, or you do have dairy but you don't eat pork, or you eat pork but you don't eat fish, or you don't eat meat but you eat fish, or you eat poultry, or who cares, Or, you could be like, was it, Phoebe on Friends, she's like, no food with a face. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm not here to say one way or the other, but I guess my point was for saying that is there's levels to how you want to be. And why are you that in the first place? That was kind of my thought, right? Are you living this lifestyle? And this could be, your vegetarianism or your off-grid awesomeness or whatever, Or you're the guy that drives the electric car. Are you doing it because you like it, or are you doing it because that's your statement to the world, right? So that was kind of how all this kind of started and came together. I think is I didn't move out here so I could walk around and be a hippie and tell everybody that I lived off grid, right? I did this really. Let me look at how did I write this last time. This is a way for me to control my expenses so I wouldn't have to work as long, right? And that was the real epiphany about this time last year when I really got tired of sleeping in my truck because I lived 100 miles from town, but I didn't know what else to do because there really isn't any jobs out here where I live that I wanted to do, I guess. You could always find a job, okay, pretty much anywhere. But since I don't speak Spanish and I live practically on the border, really close to the border, if you don't speak Spanish, you're not going to get very many jobs down here, is what I figured out. But I was like, okay, so I'm living in my truck, sleeping at the Walmart parking lot, so that instead of driving 100 miles each way to get to work, right, because that was the job that I was able to find. So I kept thinking about it. I'm like, okay, for me, I already live off-grid. So I don't, what are my monthly expenses? I'm working, but half of my work is going to pay for the gas to get to work, right? Or I could sleep in my truck and get some of that time and money back. The truck was paid for, but I was still paying insurance. I had a cell phone, so I was paying for that. And then you get, like things like food you're going to eat anyway, so that was kind of like it didn't really matter. But because I was living in my truck, couldn't cook as much, which I don't like cooking anyway, but I found that I was going to Wendy's a lot because it was just so easy when I drove from where I was working to where I would sleep. I was like, well, I'll just hit the Wendy's on the way back, grab a hamburger, and sit in my truck and eat my hamburger, and then I'll feel a little bit better, and then I'll go to bed, right? And I'd sleep in the back of the truck in the winter. But, it's Texas, so it wasn't like it was that cold, right? That was kind of what I was looking at is, so I didn't move out to live off-grid, to be a hippie or whatever. what I was kind of thinking is a person could live in the country instead of living in the city. Now, you don't have to be off-grid to do that. For example, the whole off-grid is typically off of the electrical grid. So you got electricity, you got running water, you've got telephone lines, maybe cable TV, that kind of thing, right? So if you lived in the city or in a town, when you built your house or you bought your house or you rented your apartment, it has electricity coming to it. It's got water service, probably sewer, maybe natural gas, there's telephone lines, there's cable TV, maybe internet, right? All of these are part of what we call the grid now. So you could say, and I guess that was kind of part of it, is what part of the grid do you need, or could you live without all of it? Okay. So for instance, here on the edge of my property now, it's about 1,000 feet from here, I think, if I looked at the map right. Anyway, so, on where the county road is, there is power going by, and if you wanted to, you could hook up to it. To get power to where I am now, the house and the bus, because it's a few hundred feet, that would cost a lot because they have to put a pole every so often. A lot of my neighbors built their houses within 100 feet of the road, because when they hook up your service, they will put the first pole in as part of the package. And that's not very expensive. It's the additional poles that really get expensive. So if you're close enough, they put the first pole in and you're done. You could find a place that had access to electricity. If I decided I just wanted to spend $10,000 up front, and then I would have a monthly bill. Okay. Honestly, there are times where it would be really nice to just be able to flip a switch and everything worked reliably. All right. So that's just power. All right. Honestly, after having done this for a while, I don't really like the idea of having to pay a monthly bill regardless of how much I use it. And the same can be said for water and, whatever your other services are. Now, on the other side, out here, we just had some cloudy weather come through for a few days, and I had no power at all. My main source of power is solar. And by the third day, the batteries were right down. I could barely run the laptop. I couldn't make coffee without starting the generator. If it's a really heavy, cloudy day, you don't get very much. You get a little bit, but not very much. Now, if it's just overcast, yeah, you can still do something, but not as much. Okay. How much do you like compromises is kind of a way I was looking at this. A while back, Houston Firefox, who also donated about half of the solar panels I've got some that I bought and some that he donated, so probably 2/3 of the panels are what was donated. He also let me long-term borrow one of his Blue Eddies, which are freaking awesome. I'm going to do a video about that. This was one of those weird ones. So the Blue Eddy, what it is, it's a self-contained battery pack that you can run things off of, and it is really good. If you were going to do van life, I would say really look hard at one of those because they're super integrated, they work really well, and they're completely matched, right? So you buy this one device, they're expensive, but everything works well together. It's all self-contained. You could just plug a solar panel into it and then plug in your appliance to the output and you'd be done, right? So for the right situation, they're unbelievable. Okay. A few things that he has donated, and also I've had a few other Patreons. I've got a couple new Patreons. Joseph is one. It's funny, I've got two Joseph Patreons now. So, hi guys, But I get these boxes randomly show up in the mail, and it's typically, the description is, well, I bought this and I haven't had time to play with it. Here you go, kind of thing, right? Or like the solar panels, as people upgrade, they realize that their new panels don't match the old panels, so they don't use the old ones anymore. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take them. I got plenty of room. I don't care, if they're not quite electrically matched to each other, or they're not the same color or whatever. It doesn't really bother me, right? wake up. Okay, we'll start off like this. You wake up in the morning and you want to make coffee. Okay. Okay, your coffee maker. I've got a little one, a little 4-cup Mr. Coffee. It pulls about 650 watts, I think. Great. Okay. So if you had something like the Blue Eddy, I think the one I have is rated at 1,000 watts. Okay. So I could take the Blue Eddy, take the coffee maker, plug them in together. Boom, I've got plenty of power to make coffee. Great. As long as you don't go above the maximum wattage of what the Blue Eddy, for example, can deliver, everything is fine, right? But what happens if you got something else that you want to do? Well, the normal solution is, well, you just go buy the bigger one. Okay. That's one way to do it. What I usually do is I look at, can I spread my loads out? So for example, I typically brew coffee the day before, put it in a thermos. If I brew coffee now, like today, let's see what time is it now, it's 11:30, I got plenty of power. I could brew coffee now, I can make 2 pots of coffee, make one, put it in the thermos, make the second pot, put it in the thermos, grab my cup of cold coffee, reheat it, and I'm fine, right? Yep, that's cold. Okay. So by shifting my loads, I don't have to do everything first thing in the morning, right? But that was something that Houston Firefox said is the reason he bought the little one first, the one that I have, the Blue Eddy, and then tried to do something and it wasn't enough power, so he just goes out and buys the bigger one. And I'm like, okay, that's great, So the next time he comes out here, to live on his property again or whatever, then he'll just take this one back. And it was kind of one of those things where, and I'll talk about this, I do want to make a video about this because I already have a working solar system, the Blue Eddy was awkward for me, right? It doesn't have enough power to replace anything that I have. So I can't take one thing offline and put this in its place. It's not big enough to run everything off of, right? But what I was finding was, say if I had a cloudy day and I just wasn't getting any solar, this thing was a great emergency power source. So for instance, my biggest computer that I use for video editing runs great on the Blue Eddy. I can run it for hours, like 5 or 6 hours off of it, and then recharge it the next day. Great. Okay. So when I talked about compromises, are you able to adjust a little bit, right? If you're used to living in town where you've got full services, if you want a shower, you just take a shower. You don't even think about it. The water's hot. You've got running water and you've got hot water because you've got electricity. Okay. Out here, I plan my showers. Like for instance, right now, I actually do have hot water because it's a sunny day, and so I ran the hot water heater. I started at I think I started it at 9 o'clock this morning. As the sun gets higher, I'm getting enough watts off the solar panels. I'm able to slowly heat my hot water for my shower. Wintertime, I take a shower about every 2 or 3 or 4 days. Okay, because you're not sweating as much, so you get away with it. Summertime, the water is much warmer, so the water in the tank isn't 30 degrees, right? Doesn't take very much to heat it. In fact, last year, I was taking a shower from water that was heating up in a black pipe laying on the ground. I had this 200-foot coil sitting there and water ran through it and the water came out. It was hotter than you really needed it because it was summertime. So I guess the question is, and in one of the files that I wrote, I was kind of like, do you have a wife, right? Or I guess a spouse, I could say it that way. For me, as a single guy living by myself, I can make compromises. If I had a wife or a girlfriend out here, those choices would be different. Okay? Because, well, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a wife, but just because, I'm used to camping. I was in the military. I'm used to roughing it a little bit, right? And that's kind of part of my experience. You know, if I was really, can you get away with limited running water? Can you kind of scale back that? Or do you want to be civilized? And maybe that's the other way to look at it. So when I was thinking, I had a few weeks actually where I was trying to get this idea out of my head, and I never really felt like it was, you know, I had a feeling, but I couldn't figure out how to explain it. And then finally one night, just before I fell asleep, it was like, how hippie do you want to be? Okay, I know this is nothing against hippies or whatever, but it's like, do you need running water every day? Do you need electricity every day? Do you need to take a shower every day or twice a day? Okay. Or can you make some different choices? That was kind of like the epiphany. I was like, okay, so if we think about, you know, how vegan are you? How vegetarian are you? How hippie are you? Okay, let's kind of go like that. So the other thing is, you know, why do you even want to do this? Do you? You know, if you're watching this video, you probably are considering it. Odds are, if you already live this lifestyle, you probably don't need to watch this video. All right. Okay, I'm going to try to read through my script here and find little nuggets, and we'll go from there. One thing that I had written down a couple times, though, everything out here is harder than you think it's going to be. It's harder than you think it should have to be. It's harder than it was living in town. Okay. You know, so there's things that I do because I don't have the cash to do the right thing. And most of my life experience is based on trying to do things on the cheap, not the right way to do it, but maybe it's the best I can do. Or maybe I just don't want to spend the money on this because I want to do this, right? I have spent most of my life eating top ramen so that I could do things like buy a new camera, buy a wireless mic for my camera that I can then use to make more videos, right? This is the thing, is everybody's path is different. Maybe that's the best thing I could say. You know, I'll just put that at the beginning. Everybody's path is different. Things that work off-grid, there isn't enough of us living out here to make it worth a factory building things that we need the way that we need them. That's really a good way to look at it, I think, because it's always going to be more expensive because we're on the fringe. Think about the exceptional days. Okay. A lot of people that have seen some of my videos are like, oh, we need to get you an air conditioner. It's just too hot out there. Okay. Well, it is hot, but it's not, oh my God, so hot for so many days in a row. Because I don't have very many days that I really, really need an air conditioner for survival. Right? Maybe it's uncomfortable for a few hours, but a swamp cooler works really good out here because all I need to do is get from 105 degrees down to 95 degrees and I'm completely fine. 105, yeah, your brain turns to mush and you're just sitting there drooling like an idiot. But wintertime, there's only a few times where it gets so cold. And summertime, there's only a few times where it gets so hot that you really need to deal with it. So that's what I'm calling my exceptional days. Okay. How hippie do you need to be? How hippie do you want to be? I mean, obviously, you could come out here, if you had the money, go buy rent or buy the heavy equipment, clear cut the land, you could put in, your big house. You could do it right, Great. But it's like, yeah, it's like you don't have to live in a teepee or like a yurt. You don't have to do that. You can be whatever you want to be. I think the best advice that I've heard that I could share is if you can get yourself to a situation where you can live inexpensively, short term, and by short term, if you could live a year before you did anything really big, if you bought a school bus, had an RV, lived in a van, something like that, right? If you could discipline or whatever to the point that you could do that. Learn the land and then build, right? Because the first place I was going to build was close to where the bus was parked the first time. I had actually drawn lines in the sand. I hadn't started digging or anything yet, but I had kind of scoped it out. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put my house right here. And then about a month later, we got into monsoon, and that whole area was underwater. I had no idea it rained out here. I mean, it's the desert, that kind of thing, right? If you just could give yourself a little bit of time. The other way, the traditional way of the normal, what normal people do, those scary people that we don't talk to very much. Yeah, you could, work 8 hours, and then you make your money, and then you try to live your life on the weekends, or you do what I do, and you get your whole day. You don't have any money, but you get to do what you want with what you have. So, I'm on the other fringe, I guess. It's very easy to get pulled down that rabbit hole of thinking you can do something for nothing. And to a point you can. But, I find myself sometimes it's like I'm spending $10 trying to save $1, it feels like. Doing it the hippie way is costing me more, and it's time and money. I said this already, but the one question, do you have a wife? If you got a wife or kids, a lot of this changes. How hippie do you want to be? Are you going to recycle? Okay. Or are you going to even reuse? I'm looking at all my tin cans because I eat a lot of soup and chili and stuff like that. I'm like, I keep thinking, what can I make out of these cans? I actually was thinking one time I could weld them all together and make rain gutters. I'm like, how many cans would that take? I mean, I probably could do it with the amount that I eat, but that's a lot of time, right? And the thing is the guy over here thinks that's the dumbest thing ever, and the guy over here, he's like, oh my God, that's the best thing ever. It's a scale, and this guy isn't even the same guy. He's going to think this is a great idea, and then the next thing he's going to think that's a dumb idea, right? So I guess maybe my job, I'll just keep making up all these ideas, and you guys decide which ones you like, and the ones that you keep clicking on like, Gardening, that's a whole nother subject. I got a lot of people are asking me about gardening because I did a little bit last year, and I'm like, for me personally, and again, it always comes down to, how do you want to do it? When I ate, I had carrots and radishes and lettuce, and the tomatoes never grew. The potatoes, I had really big tops and almost nothing growing underneath. It was nice to go out and cut the lettuce, pull a few carrots, eat some radishes. I had onions. I'd cut them up, put them in a salad. I could eat a great big salad and turn around and I was still hungry, right? I can't seem to get full on what I was growing, and so then I still had to eat whatever I had anyway. Chickens. I would love to have chicken. Well, I do not want chickens, but I would love to have eggs, right? I could probably go buy a dozen eggs once in a while. Is all of this worth $2? Or I'll just go buy my own eggs. It's easier. No labels. I'm just me. I'm not vegan. I'm not vegan. I'm not off grid. This is me. This is where I live. I'm not doing this for a statement. This is just how I live. I get a lot of people are like, oh, you sold the truck. How are you going to go buy wood to build more stuff? And I'm like, no, I think maybe I led you guys on a little bit. I didn't come out here to have an endless supply of projects to build just to do video of, It was kind of like, well, the house is built. I might build another porch off the front of it. I could build a roof over the bus. That's a possibility. It would shade it a lot. I would get a little bit more water from that. That's a possibility. If I build a roof, it's going to be for water catchment and shade. I didn't come out here to build endless projects. I came out here to get my cost of living down so that I could afford to write the books and stuff. Oh yeah, no more tarps. Tarps are evil. Enough said. This a little bit was what I was saying before. The economy of scale. If you're going to do anything off-grid or alternative energy, alternative lifestyle, as soon as you decide you're not part of the mass majority, your life became harder. Everything is more expensive, it's more difficult because there isn't everybody else doing it. It's like you're plowing snow all by yourself instead of working with a herd. Everything is in your face. It's like anybody else can just flip a switch and they got lights. For us, we got to have a generator and solar and batteries and an inverter and all your own specialized wiring that then ties into a less efficient system, right? You're taking DC voltage trying to make AC because everything that you buy for your house, it's like, okay, I got a coffee maker, I got a slow cooker, I've got, now I just bought a waffle iron, I got a rice cooker now, I've got a coffee maker. None of those run on DC. My microwave, AC powered. Every single thing I do is triple layer redundancy or triple layered more difficult because it's like, well, even though I'm generating DC power, I still have to turn it into AC power because none of my appliances are DC appliances. There is a billion people, there's 7-8 billion people that are running coffee makers that are plugged into the wall. Very few of us need a coffee maker that runs off of DC voltage. So they don't make very many, they aren't very good, and you don't get that mass market economy of being able to build a bunch of them. But everything, if you're going to live out here, everything is harder. There is not one thing that's easier, honestly. You're going to live on a bumpier road because there isn't, I mean, we only have a handful of neighbors on this road. We don't have the tax base to make a better road, honestly. We don't have as good of cell phone coverage. I'm amazed that, with the cell phone booster, I have decent coverage out here. So again, thank you to our Patreons and supporters who, or in this case, Houston Firefox, who donated me a cell phone booster. Now I have decent internet out here. There's times I joke, I miss the 1990s with my modem. That was faster quite often. Okay. Everything, as soon as you say alt energy, alt lifestyle, everything is harder. But I still think it's worth it. I'm not ready to move back to an apartment. But as long as you know that being on the fringe is going to make your life much more difficult, at least you'll be ready for it. Somebody should tell you up front before you just run out here and, go be a hippie or something. Anyway, I think I've said enough on that. I've got hot water. I'm going to take a shower, and I think I'm going to shave this off. This is really bugging me. I was going to try it out for a while, but yeah, that's got to go. So anyway, y'all be good to each other. Peace out and live the life. The video title would be Off-Grid Awesomeness, Degrees of Hippiness. That works. The theory on the video is going to be how hippie do you want to be, and degrees, yeah, it's going to be pretty windy, so we'll just get this shot. So rain gutters, water catchment, and we'll use solar electricity to heat the water for the shower that I desperately need. And by separating drinking water from regular utility water, now I don't have to worry about running out of drinking water because I've got over 100 gallons of drinking water, and the less clean water goes in the main tank now, and we use that for showers and stuff like that. And cut.